What's up, everyone? Excited to give this video today about Virgin Galactic, which obviously, if you aren't living under a rock, you know that this stock sent the first commercial flight to the edge of space today for paid tourists, which is amazing. Obviously, there were some Air Force people on that flight that were running tests and that sort of thing in obviously zero gravity, which is an advantageous thing to do for research purposes. But this was a huge day for Virgin Galactic, and I'll get into the stock in a bit. I'll jump into the chart and tell you what I'm thinking about shares, where I think the stock is headed, and then I'll also tell you why shares dropped today. So let me just run through this first. So obviously this is a huge news for the stock, and I think this is the day that Virgin Galactic has finally become a company, not just an idea. So I really think they are pioneering an industry, and they're the first mover in a potentially massive industry, right? How many people pay for cruises, flights, vacations? But there's a lot of wealthy people that would love to spend, a significant amount of money on a trip to space, and that's about almost a $500,000 there. But when we look at Blue Origin and SpaceX, there really is no other real true competitor. So I obviously SpaceX has done it, but they're not doing it on the same scale as Virgin Galactic, and they're also not publicly traded, so they're not really a peer in terms of the stock market. So with that being said, let's take a look at the chart. Let's see what happened today. Let's see where shares are going. So shares, obviously, if you were watching the flight, you know that shares had initially gone up, up like 2-3% on the backs of, basically a good, nice, clean takeoff and a move into outer space, or just outside our orbit. But obviously, they had fallen actually once things were pretty much all over. Once the flight was actually successful, that was when shares really started to fall off and dropped, about 13% at its lows. And you can see here, though, that this is one reason why I think you shouldn't be selling here, is because this 50-day moving average, which sits currently at about 410, held to nearly the penny. And this 50-day moving average held nearly to the penny just on Tuesday. So it seems like this 50 DMA is a very strong level of support for the stock. So with that being said, technically, I don't believe we've fallen off a cliff, and we should be selling shares here. I personally, I'm not selling my calls. I'm not selling my shares. I'm holding. And that's because the chart really hasn't fallen off yet. The stock is still outperforming the market. It's been outperforming the market since mid-June. Obviously, we got that big run-up in anticipation of this test flight. But what I think is, as the company continues to bring in some revenue, continues to do these test flights at the end of every month, I do believe that helps push shares higher. So with that being said, what I'll be looking for tomorrow is if we can jump above this 200-day moving average again at about 460, and if we could break this top at about $4.90, which is where shares had topped out over the past 2 days. So I'll be looking for those two things to happen. But as long as this 50 DMA move doesn't get broken through, I believe we likely hold this level and continue higher to about $6.70 over the coming weeks. So that's my official price prediction for Virgin Galactic. I think we hold this 50 DMA and move higher over the coming weeks. But with that being said, let's talk about why this drop occurred today. Well, my theory is, the share dilution, which the company announced just a couple days ago, is always seen as a bad thing for investors, especially investors who have been long-term holders. They always tend to feel a bit betrayed, right, to have their existing shares, be worth less, is not worthless, but worth less, is definitely something that peeves many investors. And I think many large institutions that hold the stock use today's news event for basically as exit volume. So I believe it was many of the institutions, the longer term shareholders that were getting out today, basically in reaction to that dilution news, but there just wasn't enough volume to actually sell their shares out. So I believe, those institutions likely, finally flushed out their positions today. So with that being said, I mean, you can see it here, right? Vanguard owns 17% of the shares outstanding. Oh, excuse me, 10% of the shares outstanding. So, given that, given you have 10% of the stock in one institution, you're kind of beholden to that institution. So if Vanguard made the decision to sell shares today, or, X, Y, and Z large institution, they likely did so in reaction to the share dilution news. They just simply didn't have the volume required to sell what they wanted to sell, when that share dilution news had came out. So I think many of the long-term holders, the large institutions, use today as basically exit volume. And just to further prove my point here is, you may think because we see it so much on stock twits, we see it on Twitter, that this is a large retail name. Well, it's really not. And we can see it here. So retail ownership is less than 1% of the stock. And as you can see, that has even dropped over the past couple months. So, given that, the person you're talking to on Reddit about this stock, you two are not moving shares. It's the large institutions that likely sold today, that are really, determining whether the stock goes up and down on a given basis, on a daily basis, I should say. So that's kind of my theory as to why shares dropped. And then I'll cover the short interest data that we got in recently. So short interest is 23% of the float, which is pretty high, and definitely leaves the company a bit susceptible to a short squeeze. But I wouldn't say they're on short squeeze watch, just because their days to cover is 1.35, which basically means that it takes 1.35 days of average volume to cover the shares sold short. But a short squeeze is typically demonstrated by at least 10 days of average, of days to cover. So with only one, we're only 10% there in terms of that, short squeeze threshold that most people look for. So that is basically my thesis on SpaceX. SpaceX, on Virgin Galactic. So I do think this 50 DMA holds and we move higher. Just for conclusion purposes, I think this 50 DMA holds. We move higher to about $6.70. And I really think the selling today was likely just institutions getting out, not based on anything that happened today, but really just the share dilution news, which honestly is commonplace when you have a stock that doesn't make money and needs to invest heavily in growth, which honestly the share dilution doesn't scare me much, especially if you're not a long-term shareholder. If I bought at the IPO, I'd be pretty pissed, but I didn't. So with that being said, though, I hope you enjoyed the video. I will end it there. If you got some value from this video, please leave a like. We post company breakdowns and important market moving news on this channel on a daily basis, so make sure you are subscribed. If you would like to receive my daily portfolio moves, my exits, my entries, and see how me and my team of analysts are trading the markets, join the Discord through the link in the description below to get our free 7-day trial. Also, if you would like to join our free daily newsletter, sign up to our Substack, which is linked below as well. With that being said, good luck everyone. Happy trading, happy investing.